Ladies and gentlemen, the next step, the evolution. This isn't just for real estate sales. This is for everybody. So I started selling real estate in 2007. And when I started selling real estate in 2007, the consumer, the buyers, relied heavily on me as the real estate agent to be able to guide them through the process. In fact, they would actually even sit in my car once upon a time. Today, as we know, 2020, that's not the case. Consumers are going where to look for homes. Zillow and Redfin own the consumer's eyeballs. All right, so I don't think anybody here is with Redfin, and it wouldn't matter even if there was, right? Because we're just acknowledging reality. That's all we're doing. That's all that it is just if you don't know where you are, then it's going to be near impossible to understand how to get where you want to go. So right now, one of our competitors owns the eyeballs. Another vendor who would be our competitor if they saw that it fit their advantages, and probably will at some point soon become a competitor, they own the eyeballs. And so today, the technology, which is what those two companies are using, has allowed for the buyers and the sellers to perceive that they can transact real estate without you. That's a false perception, as we all know. The unfortunate thing is how often does a buyer or a seller need your services on average?
Often? All the time.
No, one buyer or one seller.
Every 7 to 10 years.
Every 7 to 10 years.
Oh.
Yeah, that's on me, Susan. I didn't ask the question well. All right, so every 7 to 10 years, a buyer or a seller is going to need your services. So because they only need your services every 7 to 10 years, their perception of what can go wrong in a real estate transaction is not the same as yours. You have a knowledge of what could go wrong in a transaction. They don't, because they don't do it enough times. Okay, and even if they did have a bad transaction 7 years ago, they're going to blame it on, in their memory. Their memory is going to be it was the agent that sucked, not the situation or the circumstance. That's the way they're going to remember it. Okay, and so then now they could discount even if they did have a bad experience before, the fact that they need guidance, because they can go on the internet and they can find what they perceive is what's involved in a real estate transaction, which is just simply, finding a home, which we know that that's not true. So Uber killed the taxi, and technology has changed. And right now, if Uber could kill the taxi, if Airbnb can, really impact hotels, if new technologies can come on board that transform the way we do business in a second, is it possible that could happen in our environment? And in fact, is it possible that it's happening right now? Or even better, not better, or even more accurately, is it possible it's already happened and we may not be aware of it yet? And in fact, the pandemic has actually accelerated our speed of evolution. Okay, so and I don't know if it's ever going to go back. I've done at least a dozen listing appointments in the last 6 months, at least. I don't know how, if we go back to, where it goes next. Like, I would anticipate that because we've had such a rapid shift in the way that we do business and the way that we communicate, and the way that we order our groceries, and the way that we order our muscle milkshakes, the way that we do business now, the way that we consume today, it's different than even 6 months ago. It was already headed in that direction, and then it was accelerated. Okay, so that's something that you guys have got to understand. So futurist, inventor, Google's director of engineering, he says that by the year 2045, we will experience a technological singularity. And what that means is that everything technologically will be connected. Everything. I don't necessarily, I think if you saw that 20 years ago, in fact, 20 years ago was when he wrote it, people were calling him a lunatic. They're calling him Looney Tunes. Could you imagine that 25 years from now that becomes a truth? What do you guys think about that?
Possibly.
Whether it's 25 or 30, it's coming.
Well, there's another gentleman. So Moore's law was talked about the rate of the transistors, how it would double every, I think 2 years, and how it would double until it became almost exponential. And then when it became almost exponential, a new technology would come in and a new technology would replace it. Okay, so that's what Moore said in the 1960s. And so in the 1960s, he had predicted that, and that became true all the way up until about 15 years ago. And about 15 years ago, there was new technology that was adapted that changed. Okay, so now we're going through like the second phase of that. So when you look at what has happened over the last 10 years, 10 years ago, today, there's two people. Today, we're all across the country. And in fact, we're all across the world right now because there's two people that are 8,000 miles away from everybody else that's a part of this conversation right now, who I could talk to in a, what is this, a 6x3 or 6x4 piece of plastic. And I can actually have a real life conversation with them in real time. And 10 years ago, could you have imagined that happening? I think that even 20 years, 25 years from now, I think, in my opinion, I think that that's a long period of time. And if Moore's law proves true, where things, and it's happened in the last 10 years, double every single 2 years, if that becomes true, then you can measure the exponentialness of the technology in front of us.